Hi, good morning, everybody, and welcome at Microsoft Ignite the Tour, and obviously very welcome at my session. Today I'm going to talk about something which is, we're pretty much at the beginning of all this exciting stuff, and it has everything to do with artificial intelligence, machine learning, and we're just at the beginning. I mean, there are some very cool things going on, and probably during the rest of the conference, you'll see a lot of more about machine learning and maybe even a bit of artificial intelligence. And maybe some of you already have something like this at home. So who of you has like an Alexa speaker or like a Google Home speaker? So yeah, not too many actually, but well, I'm going to show you a couple of things which will give you an impression on how that kind of material works. And obviously, Microsoft has a platform which is called the Cognitive Services API. And that allows you to do a lot of really cool things. But before we start, let me just do a bit of explanation about what does cognitive mean. If you look it up, you'll find something. Cognition is the mental action or process of acquiring knowledge and understanding through thought, experience, and senses. So if you take a good look at like the last three words, pretty much, like the thought, the experience, and the senses, well, these days you have things like a Raspberry Pi with all kinds of sensors, so we can measure all kinds of stuff. Experience is a bit like machine learning. I mean, the more data your machine learning model has, the more accurate it will be. And thought is obviously a bit not really into software, but this is we're getting there. And I actually started with my two daughters. One is 2.5 and the other one is 5 right now. But what I found interesting is specifically when they were like 1.5, they started to recognize things. And this is actually an example of one of your cognitive developments. So if I would ask one of my girls at that age, what is this? She would consider this to be a dog. And she couldn't talk back then, but she was actually saying woof woof. But if I would show her this picture, she'll also recognize this as being a dog. And if I take this a step further, she'll consider this to be a dog as well. So this is a typical example of cognitive development, recognizing shapes and stuff like that. She would even consider this to be a dog, and the last one is also a dog, according to her. So what you see here is we will consider this to be dogs, but I mean, if I would ask you another question to get back to some more serious matters, if I would ask any of you which object doesn't belong here, it'll take you a second to find out. Well, not even a second. But if I would ask you to write an algorithm to determine which object doesn't belong here in software, that would be slightly different. That would be difficult, right? And so this is something where the cognitive API from Microsoft can help us with. Because that pattern recognition is something that we as a human develop at a very early stage, like 1.5 years, or maybe even earlier. I'm not like an expert on that. But yeah, this whole pattern is way more difficult to write an algorithm in software in whatever language to determine that one object doesn't belong here. And so the Cognitive Services API contains a number of services that allows us to do certain things. So one of the things is actually it can tell us what is on a photo, and we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. One of the other services that it has is, let me go to the next one. So as I mentioned before, it is a set of services which is based on machine learning and artificial intelligence. And those services are basically vision, and that's the one that I was talking about just a couple of minutes ago. You'll see that we'll be able to upload a picture to this Vision API, and we'll get a description back. So this is something which is being done with machine learning and a bit of artificial intelligence. It can actually determine what is on a picture, and that is really, really powerful. One of the other things is an interesting one as well. It's speech. These days, a lot of cars have some sort of speech recognition as well. But you'll find that the speech recognition on those devices are pretty limited. I mean, you have to be very accurate if you want to speak to your car and tell the car, I want to go to the Amsterdam Rai. You have to be very precise. And this is something where the speech API can help you with. I'll talk about that as well. And then we have the language service. Maybe some of you have already done a Skype conversation with somebody who is speaking a language that you don't. And Skype is able to, like, real-time translate it into your native language. And the things that you say, it's translating that in the native language of the person at the other end. Yeah, that's one of the other ones that comes with the cognitive services. Then there is the knowledge one. I'll just talk about it right now, but I'm not going to dive too deep into that. The knowledge one is pretty much a combination of Bing, together with like a whole bunch of databases from academics and universities to get all kinds of information about whatever you want. And that works great together with search, obviously. But I'm going to talk about the first three. I'm going to talk in this session about the Vision API. I'm going to talk about the speech and the language, and then more interesting, the natural language commands. So how can you talk to a machine and it will actually know what you want? How can we do that? I'm going to show you a bit on how to set that up. And the other ones, there are a couple of more services implemented recently, but I think the first three ones are pretty cool. So we're going to do something with that. And yeah, what can we do with it? Well, I told you already with the Vision API, we can actually describe content of pictures and videos. And I mean, this is all very cool, but I set up a small little project, which I'm going to show you. And we're going to play around with a couple of images to give you an impression on how this works. And the application itself is quite simple. I mean, in this case, I've set it up with web forms, but it is really not a big deal what kind of technology you use. The idea is that we will upload a picture to a specific endpoint on Microsoft Azure. And I obviously prepped a couple of images here. And, well, let's start with the slides. Which object doesn't belong here? If I would upload this image to the Cognitive Vision API, it will analyze it and we'll get something back here. And this is a bit of structured information, in this case, a JSON object. And what it actually has done is it has taken a good look at the picture. And what you see here is a number of categories, in this case only one. So it has categorized this image as being a drink. There are a couple of other flags, whether it is an adult content or it's racy content. I can tell you I did check the adult one, but I did it at home when nobody saw it. So I uploaded some really cool picture, and yes, it told it was adult. Because it did the adult one, I'll believe the racy content will be working as well. But what is actually more interesting is when I scroll down, there is going to be a description here. It isn't quite right, because I thought I uploaded a glass of beer. And it should have taken a look at the file name because it had beer in there, but minor detail. The interesting thing to mention here is that you'll see on a number of places, you see a confidence factor. And that is very important with these kind of predictions. So all those services give back a confidence factor, and that means that it is for 60% sure that this is a glass of orange juice. And in this case, it was wrong because it was a glass of beer. But other interesting things here are as well that it has done a collection of tagging. So it has assigned. Can you, by the way, read it all, or should I zoom it in a bit? It might be a bit small, actually. I'll make it slightly bigger. So what you see here is that it has actually, for some reason, categorized it as being a pitcher with beer. Well, that is a beer-related thing, but it still says it's orange juice because of the color. But this is how that endpoint has analyzed this image. But it does a bit more as that. So I could also say, if I upload that object that didn't belong here, and I'll did I analyze it already? No. So what we'll see here is that it actually determined that this is coffee, which is quite nice. And also, if I take a look at the description, it's a cup of coffee on the table. So by using this particular service, we can determine which picture didn't belong on the slide. Yeah? I can upload one of the other pictures as well, but you'll see that it won't be coffee. So if I take this one, then you will get another description here. And in this case, well, it's a glass mug. For some reason, it's got some problems with beer. But there are factors in the results that enable you to determine which object didn't belong on that slide with the cup of coffee and the beers. That's the idea. In this case, you'll see that it's also completely unsure about this being a bottle. So here the confidence factor is way less. So this is a very important thing that you get with it, the confidence factor. And if you have to do a lot of image processing, maybe you work for an insurance company or I don't know, whatever, and you need to deal with a lot of images, you can actually process them through this Vision API. And whenever something is below a certain confidence factor, somebody should take a look at it manually. This is one of the ways that you can do that. But it recognizes a bit more because cups and beer mugs is not really interesting. So I did a couple of other things, and let me see if my daughter was right. So let me upload this other picture. I won't tell what it is. Maybe it's listening. You never know. Yeah, there we are. Okay, so what did it say? It has said that there is grass involved, there is a dog involved, it's probably outdoor as well. It's pretty sure about the dog. You see, it's 99% sure of the dog, which is interesting because it is like a Chinese dog which looks slightly different. But if we check out the description of this image, it is 78% sure of being a large brown dog laying on the green grass. Well, it is quite right about it. Let me open up the picture again. So I'll do it like this, make this a bit bigger. I mean, it was this dog, and actually it's not really that big. It couldn't tell because this is my own dog, and it's about like this. So I wouldn't consider it to be really big, but it looks impressive because of my photographic skills, probably. And one of the other things which is interesting is that it can also recognize certain people. So I've obviously prepared a number of pictures. We all know who this is. When I was in London, there were a bunch of people who didn't know who she was, but fortunately my software was able to tell who she was. Because if I upload this one, then you will actually see that this is a person. And in this case, you'll see a slightly different structure. It is a celebrity section here. And it actually tells that this is Dawson Cruz. It's 99% sure. and you'll get a rectangle of her face, which is also pretty nice. And it doesn't work only with one face, but I'll show you something else. You saw the picture already. Oh, and another interesting thing to mention here is I couldn't tell if that's true, but if we scroll down, it also has done an estimate on her age. I couldn't tell if she was 24 on that picture, but I mean, she looks 24 to me. But this is also something that the Vision API is able to do. So it can recognize faces. It can also tell emotions. It can tell whether that person is smiling or crying or what age it is. And it's telling us that it is a female person. And so one of the other ones which I found pretty interesting because it's pretty accurate, but it does have a couple of flaws here and there. Maybe you've seen the Expendables movie. It's got like a whole bunch of guys in there which are pretty tough. If I upload this picture, I checked it yesterday again, and it was very interesting, the conclusion that it came with, because it will recognize all the people, except if I go here, let me go to the description, it's a bit better. So the picture actually had Jet Li, it had Jason Statham, and it had Barney Ross. But I mean, whoever saw the movie, Barney Ross was Sylvester Stallone. So for some reason, it doesn't recognize Sylvester Stallone, or it recognizes it as Barney Ross. So every now and then, there is a bit of a thing going on here. So that was actually the role he was playing. But the rest of the people are pretty accurate. And again, you'll get the facial rectangles as well. So if you want to clip out automatically, if you want to write some software to get those faces out, you'll have the coordinates here. So, yeah, it's a pretty interesting thing. And these days, you can actually set up your own Vision API through Azure and train the models yourself. So you can actually tell, like, okay, this was not good. So I could actually train the pictures to tell, like, hey, Barney Ross is Sylvester Stallone, and that big dog on the grass is a medium-sized dog. So that's something that you can train yourself on Azure. I'll show you in the portal how you can get started with it later. But yeah, this is one of the very interesting things, and you can play around for hours and try to upload all kinds of pictures. And I mean, it does a pretty good job on describing all these aspects in a picture. One of the other things that is interesting to mention is that, for instance, there are a couple of things here as well, like a dominant foreground color written out, but also in if it's a black and white image, and what the accent color is. And in this case, the photo was probably photoshopped with some mask on it or something. But yeah, so this is stuff that you can get out with the Vision API. So it's yeah, really nice technology. How did I actually start using it? I'll show you in Visual Studio really quick, because it's really not a lot. What I did first, okay, so in the Azure portal, you have a couple of things. Okay. You can actually search it with the, if you want to create a new resource, you can actually go to Vision or Cognitive. And this gives you access to the Vision, the language, and the search services using the single API. If you set this up, then a machine learning model will be set up for you, and everything will be rolled out. What you basically get is an endpoint with an authentication token that you can retrieve in the portal. And what I did in my application is, in a nutshell, I upload that image. And if I go to the uploading procedure, I get the bytes of the uploaded image and I call the endpoint. The new Vision client is pretty much a HTTP client. It's got an endpoint, and you post the image to it, and you'll get the results back. So it is really not more than that. You can actually specify a number of things that you want to have in the result. I'll make this a bit bigger as well. I think I coded the Vision client here as well manually. So here I will actually set up a HTTP client. I will use the subscription key together with the URL, and I'll send it over. And that's pretty much the only thing you need to do. So send over the picture, and you'll get the results back. This example is, by the way, I have it on GitHub. So if you want to play around with it, you can just go to my GitHub account. It's on the last slide, and you can play around with it. But yeah, so that is in a nutshell what you can do with the Vision API. The Vision API also enables you to upload videos. And what it will basically do then, it will analyze the video. It will take a couple of snapshots, and it will do some more magic on those. So it will analyze those cells, and then it will create something for it. I have tried this only once on a conference, and I won't do it again because the movie upload pretty much fails every time because of Wi-Fi and that kind of stuff. But a video can be uploaded as well, and it will be analyzed as well in the same way. Well, you saw that it recognizes faces on pictures with emotions as well. It also recognizes, yeah, this is actually the next thing. What we're going to do is the audio and speech. So I'll, yeah. And we're gonna check out one of the other services right now, which is the speech service. One of the things which is most interesting is the last bullet on the slide deck, and that is actually use natural language to give commands. So how does that work? Well, natural language is a very tough nut to crack in software development. Because if you write an application, you as a developer know quite sure what needs to be done and what doesn't need to be done. So if I have a form and I place a button on it, if that button is being clicked, you as a developer knows what's going on there. But if you want to use natural language, then that's a different story. Huh? And maybe you've seen some demos about Skype, like a Skype bot, where you can actually enter some text. I want to order a pizza with ham and cheese. And then it will be processed. But maybe somebody else types in a command or says a command, I'm hungry, give me a pizza with ham and cheese. So that's a different way of formulating it, and that's what we call a natural language command. And that is obviously pretty difficult. If you would, want to do something with that, you have to, first you have to capture the audio, then you have to get that into text, and then you have to do something with it. And so how can we do that? Well, that brings us to one of the other ones, which is interesting. The one that I have is, I've also put up a small demo for it. And it's actually in the same thing. That is the speech demo that I have. So obviously there is a service which will do text to speech. That means that if you enter some text, then the computer will tell it to you. But the other one is more interesting, which is the speech to text, because that is something that we can use, to do something with a natural command. So let me show you how that works. Let me have a quick check if I put that out. Yeah. Okay, so for this I created another page, and I have to use my API key here. Let me see, where did I store that API key? Welcome at the Microsoft Ignite The Tour. And this is one of the things which is the speech to text. So this is one of the other services that we have. And what I have done here is that I have I've captured the audio from a microphone. I'm opening up a WebSockets connection to the endpoint of the cognitive services for speech to text. And I'm streaming that audio right through. And what you'll see is that you get actually, the display text, which is the thing that I said. So this is a first step if you want to go into natural commands. You have to capture the command given by voice and get it like into structured information back. Yeah, so a very nice feature in this particular scenario, I've done it through web. So it requires a little bit of JavaScript to open up the socket and get all that audio over. But again, it's also available for download. But the first step in speech to text. And this is how it works. It doesn't do anything else. It just analyzes what you say and you get it back as plain text. Right? So the second step in natural commands is obviously, suppose I will give another command. Let me do that right now. I want to book a flight from London to New York tomorrow. This would be a more useful natural command because there are a couple of interesting things here. I want to book a flight, but it also has a number of parameters basically. So I want to fly from London and I want to fly to New York and I want to fly tomorrow. So basically I want to analyze this particular text as a command, book a flight. Where I want to depart from London and I want to fly to New York and I want to do it tomorrow. So there are 3 parameters in this command as well that I want to get out. But, I mean, I can also rephrase this. I can also tell the guy, hey, listen, book me a flight from London to New York tomorrow. It's different, but I still want the same. Yeah, so how can we do something useful with this? Well, that brings us to something else, which is called LUIS. And LUIS stands for Language Understanding Intelligence Service. And this is something which is quite interesting, but it requires you to set something up. I have already gone to the site of LUIS. You can find this at luis.ai. It also runs on Azure. It works with the cognitive services, etc. But this is a special configuration portal, basically, where you can set up a natural language service, basically. So let me get into the portal and show you how that works. So suppose you want to do the travel agent and you want to have something by phone or by Skype. I mean, I could also type in this in a Skype box and then do something with it as well. Huh? So this can be used for a Skype bot as well as audio processing. I need to configure my application. And my application will be a machine learning model. So I need to set up a machine learning model. I need to train the model and I need to tell the model what I want. Before this cognitive services API, it was pretty difficult to go into the machine learning stuff, but you'll see that they made it quite easy now. So if I would create my new application here, I will start by calling it Travel Amsterdam. You can actually, that is very important, you will need to pick a language. I will keep it on English. But as you can see, this list with languages is getting longer every month, basically. But it is important that if you are running a multi-language service for something, that you'll have separate models for that. So once I have set up this application, I need to train the application. I need to tell him what I want to do or what I want my customers to do. Yeah, so for instance, in this case, and this is what they call an intent. We have to set up a number of commands, one or more. The one in the case that we saw in my demo here is, for instance, that was the wrong one. Book a flight. Where was it? Yeah. So this is one of the intents that we want the application to understand. And we can do that by just add one. And I will call this, you can actually see this as like a method, basically. I will call it book flight. What happens now is I need to train the model. And what it actually says on the page, type about 5 examples of what a user might say and hit enter. So in this case, I will give the first command. I want to book a flight from Amsterdam to New York tomorrow. So this could be one of the commands that would need to trigger the book flight intent. And I can, but I can also tell I want to fly from London to Sydney next week. That will be another way of putting it. I could also say, give me a flight or fare, I don't know, from Amsterdam, what was that? To Madrid. Like this. And what this basically does is we are now telling this intent where, what could be asked, which could result in having this book flight thing. But I mentioned before, there are a couple of things that I would like to have as well, and those are basically, for instance, the departure airport and the destination airport. So I want, if somebody asks me something about this flight stuff, I want to be able to get the book flight because I want to know that needs to be executed, but I want to have a certain number of parameters with it as well. Like Amsterdam to Madrid, I can actually train or specify the model by hovering over, clicking Amsterdam, and I can create an entity for it. So I can call this departure. And we have a number of entity types here, like variable types. In this case, it's going to be a simple one. And this one is going to be a simple one as well. So this is going to be the destination. This is also a simple one. And what I can do now is, if I click on London, I can also say in this particular command, this will be the the departure, sorry. And this will be the destination. And then I'm going to talk about the next week in a minute. Let me specify this one as well. Departure, and I want to have New York with it as well. There was some keyboard combination. Yeah. Okay. So I have now specified a number of things here. There are also a couple, the entities that you'll see, I now only defined 2 simple entities, but maybe I want to create a new entity. And I can now actually go for a predefined set of more advanced ones as well. So I could use a regular expression, I can go for a pattern, etc., etc. And I was actually looking for one of the other ones, which is the pre-built entities. So Lewis comes with a whole bunch of predefined entities, and I am looking for one in particular, and that would be the date time version 2. I'm going to define it here. So it's in my list. If I now go back, I can actually go to the book flight. So it saw that tomorrow is going to be a date time as well. And let me put the departure here, and I did the space one again. Yeah, so that's going to be the destination. One more time. All right. So I have now this one intent. Maybe I want to do something more with my application, because the book flight would be a bit simple. I could go to the intents again, and I could, for instance, create a new intent, which is what to do in the destination place. While I'm there, what can I do? And the same goes, I'll just do one. So, what museum is in Amsterdam? I'll skip the one with the space because it's a bit easier to do. I'll put this one again in the destination pattern, and maybe I want to change this one in instead of museum. I might want to ask what restaurant or something else. So I could make this flexible as well, and I'll create a new entity which I call to do. So, well, and the thing with this is that the more examples you give your model, the more accurate it will be. But because of the time, we'll leave it till this, because I want to show you, obviously, that we can do something without keyboards. That was the title of the session. But you can imagine, because this is actually machine learning. So if we feed a whole bunch of data in this with all kinds of examples, 1,000 ways to ask a specific thing, we can make this very accurate. And the more data, the better it will be. But for this session, let's do something else here, because we can actually, once we have set up this model, we need to review a couple of things here. There are no suggestions yet. And we have a phrase list. Well, we haven't done the phrase list yet, but you can actually test the model yourself as well. But before we do that, we have to train the model. And this sounds very high tech and stuff, but basically it is now filling up the machine model with all kinds of information based on the information that I just entered. So it is optimizing tables and stuff and whatever to later on be able to analyze the stuff that we feed into this natural language understanding service. So once the model has been trained, it's now up to date, we can actually test it. And we can now actually ask our service a question. So I could say, book me a flight from Madrid to Seattle in 2 weeks. All right, so it has analyzed my query. And there are a couple of interesting things to mention here. So it has found that probably the thing that I wanted to do is book a flight. It is, again, it's got the confidence score, which is 0.93%. It found a couple of things, which is the departure was Madrid, and it found a departure date in 2 weeks. And so this is something that it analyzed. And obviously it missed a couple of things here. And that is because I probably didn't train the model enough. I didn't give him enough combinations and things. But what you'll see is that we get this back in JSON as well. If we would call the endpoint with the question, I'll now be able to publish this. And I'll publish this just to a production environment. Then it will get an endpoint. So refer to the list of endpoints here. And there is the authorization key. Let me go to the publish settings. No, wait a sec. This is changed quite frequently. Let me get rid of this one. Yeah, here we have the endpoint. Well, in this case, I can call this from whatever development language, whether it is C#, whether it is JavaScript, whether it is whatever. I mean, if you can request a URL, you can actually define your query here. So here is the queue parameter. If I would now enter this, and this is obviously more interesting, how is the weather in London? Well, I don't need artificial intelligence for that because most of the times it's raining anyway. But let's see what it says. This is interesting because on another demo I did the weather thing and I didn't do it right here. But as you can see, there is a command which, yeah, it isn't quite sure about because the command hasn't been trained. It's not really sure about what to do. It's also not too sure about the book Flight. But because the book Flight has the highest score, it will go for that one. So let me ask another question. Let me do the fare again. I want to fly from Amsterdam to London. All right. So here is something more interesting because it has found out that book Flight is probably the thing you want to do. It's got a confidence score of 78%. If you compare the intent what to do, it is only like 6% sure of that. But more interesting, it found a number of entities as well. So it has determined that the departure will be Amsterdam. It also has determined that the destination will be London. And obviously this is JSON, so we can actually just do whatever we want with this. So this is the way on how to give a natural command and get parameters out of that and do something with it. It even gives me like the phrase, the query that I did, and it gives me the start index and the end index on those entities and stuff, and it is 85% sure of London being the destination and Amsterdam being the departure airport. So this is how we can go with that. And well, to get back to the demo application that I did wanted to show you. You can now, because I've shown you a couple of things in the, this was the cognitive vision one, but I have given you a couple of things right now. I mean, I've shown you the text, the speech to text. I've also shown you how to analyze the natural commands. And I mean, my model for the flight application is simply, it's quite simple because there are only 5 entries in there. But you can imagine that once you train more, I mean, all the queries that are being asked by your end users, they will be stored in the database as well. And you can actually go to the portal on a later stage and fine-tune those things. So the model can get smarter. And the smarter it gets, the better the prediction will be. And this is exactly what's being used in the Amazon Alexa speaker as well as the Google speaker. And actually, Amazon and Alexa have their own platforms like this as well. And so this is they work in a similar way. Obviously, this one is the best, but you have to find it out yourself. No, but I mean, what we can do now actually is pretty cool, because we can actually now combine a number of those services. So if I would now combine the speech to text, and I combine that with my Lewis model, then we can actually give commands and we can do something with it. So I can now, I need probably to set up another key here. Let me have a quick check. Not quite sure, because the response should...
Yeah, simple response in the drop down.
No, I tweaked a bit to make it quite simple here. I think what we should do is have a quick check here. This was the image. No, I probably had to call something behind it. Okay, well then I have to do this on a manual base. So I could actually feed this command. Well, you saw me do it already. I could feed this command into the other service, and that would mean that I will actually be able to talk to my computer without using a keyboard. That's a bit... Sorry? So if I would execute those commands right behind each other, I will first send over the audio, get the command back in text, and then use that one in my endpoint for the natural language understanding service. Then you'll see, and this is also pretty interesting, because this time it did train properly on the date, and this is with the pre-built types. You can actually see I use tomorrow. And this is probably tomorrow, 21st of March. And you'll get this back as a exact date type. So if I would execute this command tomorrow, it will return with like the 22nd. So that's the thing with the predefined types that come with the Lewis language understanding service. So, but this in a nutshell is what I wanted to show you about the cognitive services. And the cool thing is they're all set up to be endpoints. So whether you post an image as binary data to one of those endpoints just by HTTP, or whether you do a GET on what I was just doing here, they're quite simple to set up. You'll get JSON back in most scenarios, and yeah, this is quite easy to get started with. Specifically with the natural language understanding service, yeah, you have to get around this Lewis application. But you've got some advanced diagnostics as well, so you can actually check what has been asked to your service, and you can modify. Maybe you want to add a command, or maybe you have to change something to fine-tune it. But it's giving you quite a good overview of what's being done on your endpoint. Obviously, this stuff is not entirely free, so you need to have an Azure account, and it will be charged by the number of images that you analyze, or the number of commands that you want to process, like the other things with Azure. Let me see if I can sync up with the slides here, because I probably have done a whole bunch of stuff already. So, okay, I use Visual Studio. An account that you will need. And I would like to thank you. As I said, the Cognitive Services demo that I used is available there on my GitHub account. You can play around with it. The only thing I used from DevExpress is actually the file upload control, but you can replace it with any other one. I mean, it's up to you. Or you can obviously use the DevExpress products. But yeah, I hope that you got a good idea on what's possible these days with all this nice APIs, and how the guys like Google and Alexa do it with their speakers and stuff, and giving voice commands, because this is, yeah, you can do this yourself right now. You can even do this on the Raspberry Pi device, because they can do they can call the endpoint as well. I mean, There are a couple of examples out there with a Raspberry Pi with a camera that will take a picture between 12 o'clock and 12:30 in the afternoon to see if the delivery guy with the sandwiches shows up. And once it recognizes the van of the delivery guy, it will actually send out a message to the entire company like, okay, food is here. That is fun stuff you can do. I mean, I saw this, that was just fun. And they know it's going to be between 12 and 1:30, so we're going to snap a couple of pictures to see if the delivery guy is on the parking space, and the Vision API will recognize it. And yeah, I mean, this is stuff that you can actually put together quite easy. But yeah, so I hope you like what you saw, and if you have any questions, let me know.